As oil hits prices not seen in years, the currencies of certain countries that export oil as a major commodity are hurting badly right now. And today we're going to discuss the oil crash that could be a warning of the next financial crisis. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. Let's take a look at this out of CNBC. We're talking about the boom in stocks. Stocks have been doing excessively well right here, and this is where you get all the bulls coming out and praising all of the actions of everyone, and everyone is so happy right now. So the Federal Reserve had one of their scheduled meetings, and of course, always here, the stock market hangs on to every single word that they say. U.S. stocks rallied on Thursday with the Dow Industrials climbing more than 400 points for the first time in 3 years, as investors applauded the Federal Reserve's pledge that it would be patient in increasing rates. Everyone knows that as soon as the interest rates rise, the stock market will go down. The stock market will continue to rise as long as the Fed promises to keep the rates down. And this is quite interesting when we look at it, that the fundamentals here are not really comparable. They do not correspond to the stock market and all of the reality of the situation. This is really historic times here, that interest rates have been this low for this long, and yet the public is simply not waking up to the fact. We have major distortions in the economy right here, and something has to give. Let's move on right here to another article out of CNBC, and we're talking about Peter Schiff. Now, you may agree with him, you may not, but it is very interesting to see what he said. And let's take a look. He said, look, oil prices fell from about $150 a barrel to $32 a barrel in 2008. That helped the consumer too, but it didn't stop the financial crisis. The same thing is happening now, and you're whistling past the graveyard if you think what's happening is good news. And I totally agree with that, because yes, in fact, people do get cheaper gas at this time, and of course it doesn't correspond to the price in oil, the drop in oil, but let's just say that gas prices are cheaper now than they were prior to the crash that's happened recently in oil. So of course, that is a boost to the consumer, but this isn't a good sign at all. We know specifically that something else is going on. He said this, I know the Fed can't raise rates, or they'd bring about the worst financial crisis since 2008. I don't know when they're going to tip their hats, but they're going to have to come clean about launching QE4, because if they don't do it, they're going to have a worse financial crisis than we saw in 2009. I absolutely believe that what they are doing is causing distortions or dislocations in the market. You know specifically that when you print money, when you lower interest rates at the rate that they have done, this is going to cause problems. You can't get away with it. Printing currency like they're doing, or handing it out to all these central banks, and we don't even know where it's gone. But we know that this causes problems, and that's what we have right now, what we are witnessing today with the price of oil. And then you look at assets like the equities markets that have been increasing dramatically, but that's not, of course, as I say all the time, this is not really a reality. We are seeing a devaluation of the currency, and that boosts up the stock market. When you print money, you cannot necessarily control where it goes. Certain assets can be in an inflation or hyperinflationary scenario, and others can be in a deflation. That's just the way it works. In my book, I just wanted to highlight one quick point. A major disruption in any commodity will cause its price to skyrocket. And then I say, just to give a little advice, keep an eye out for price moves after an oil spill, an earthquake, or some other event as a teaching tool. That is very good information there. But I would say that what we're experiencing right now isn't an oil spill. It's not an earthquake. or some other major event that's happening. It is more of a geopolitical event, and it is also economically bound right here. These are what happens when you have these major interventions into the financial markets. You have major problems, and let's go on with this. So we're going to connect that in with what's happening with Russia. Obviously, it's very big news right now. I've done a couple videos on it, and I hope that you've already seen them. If you haven't, essentially we have a major crashing of the ruble, the Russian currency, and Putin made his speech that we were anticipating, and he said Western sanctions accounted for at least 25% of the ruble's fall, but the main reason Russia's failure to ease its overwhelming dependence on oil and gas exports. This, as I mentioned at the beginning of the video, the currencies of nations who have these commodities are going to be hurt when those commodities drop in price. So of course, they cannot do the mining, they cannot do the digging, and so on and so forth for these commodities when the prices are too low. It's simply not profitable. They're not making that money. They're not boosting their GDP. The corporations are not willing to go ahead and find new mines or dig new wells because it's simply not profitable. This is a capitalist environment, and they are not going to go ahead with that. And you can read the article more on for yourself here, but essentially what they're saying here is specifically that yes, the sanctions have affected them. He is admitting that, but it is the fact that they do rely heavily on oil. So if they can create a situation, that is the West, if they can create a situation with these sanctions or with other geopolitical events, and they can crush the price of oil, they put the squeeze around the neck of Russia. That's when I did my video about what's happening with Saudi Arabia. That's actually doing very well right now. You'll see, if you haven't seen that already, I suggest doing so. I'll even put a link down in the description to make sure you've actually seen it. But essentially what could be happening right now could be intentional. It's very, very interesting to look at this from a different angle. We don't necessarily know this for sure, but it is interesting to take a look at the crystal ball from the different side. And let's move on. Another article out of CNBC. They said it may be a little late for Russian capital controls. The collapse of the ruble has prompted a flight of capital as investors and savers in Russia seek shelter outside the country's borders. You could read on, but essentially people are taking their money out of Russia right now. They do not want a decline in the value of their dollars. This is pretty simple. This has happened in recent times. It's happened in historic times. For those who have read the thousands upon thousands of pages of historic data, you will know that. You have seen this before. This is nothing new. For those of you who have actually gone out and read the books, you as well as I know how deep this information goes and how this is nothing but a cycle repeating. So to get on with this, when you have a devalued currency, people are going to run. They're going to have bank runs. But of course, they will continue to print money. They will do anything they need to do in order to support the banking system. In this case right here, already this is confirmed that money has left the country. This happened in Crimea, and unfortunately many individuals didn't get their money out in time. However, you see this happening historically, and we can see that in our own countries depending on where you live. If you have a issue going on, whatever that may be, a geopolitical event, a major crisis, financial crisis, you will see the currency perhaps will take a decline, and you will see cash running out. If it gets really bad, you will see a bank holiday. The bank holiday will then impose capital controls. And if the people can't get their money out, which has happened so many times before, they are going to react, and this is known as civil unrest. Be prepared for that. This is out of Reuters. Russia says will react if the U.S. imposes new sanctions. So right here, they had admitted, Putin admitted, that yes, the sanctions did affect us. It caused about 25% drop, and of course, that hurts them. They said this: Russia will take countermeasures if Washington imposes new sanctions on Moscow over the Ukraine crisis. And that's Russia's deputy foreign minister. So a high-level person here speaking these words, saying that they're going to have some retaliations this time around should they impose the sanctions. So this is really a war that has been escalating in many ways. They're calling it the next Cold War. This is something to continue to watch. I will make sure that I'm covering this information because this is huge. Let's move on just to one thing. I want to connect it. This article itself is not necessarily related, but this is how I wanted to connect it and say that this study here was canceled after $1.3 billion was spent and no results. So the actual study itself is not important to this video, but I just wanted to show you what the governments do. They spent over $1 billion on a study and then just called it quits, just scrapped it. And the reason I mention this is that the governments have this way of ballooning themselves up so large. They need to spend all of this money that they have, and they do nothing but waste it. All of the money is being controlled by the hands of the few. This is going to show you in the financial industry, in the political realm, and every other industry like the healthcare industry, the agricultural industry, and everything. It's all being used against us. We are never able to have it our own way. It's pretty sad. It's pretty amazing to look at. And these are the kind of things that, of course, I'll continue to bring out, but you also need to research for yourself and realize the failure of this government structure. It has done nothing to help or support us, and that is very, very unfortunate. So if you found this video informative, please give me a thumbs up, and don't forget to become a subscriber to the videos. The videos on here are so important. There are hundreds upon hundreds of videos on here. There are well over 11,000 subscribers now. Thank you to each and every single one of you. I want to say hello to all the new people out there. If you have any suggestions, if you have any comments or questions, please email me, comment below. I try to get back to the comments. It's very, very difficult, but I always do, and you'll find perhaps 4 days later, a week later, 2 weeks later, I'm still replying to you because I value your opinion and I value your time, so I try to get back to you. But definitely the best place to get me is at the Insider's email. So if you get on there, it's totally free. You get occasional emails from me, and the way you do that is just go to themoneygps.com, scroll down to the bottom, fill in your email address. You'll get those emails from me. They have good, short, concise info. And as I said, it's just some good information in your inbox. Hope that I'll see you there, and I will talk to you tomorrow.